This is our August stakeholder meeting for our watershed planning meetings. My name is Jordan Fox, for those of you who have not been to one of these meetings before, and I'm with the Center for Watershed Protection. But today we have a couple of excellent speakers. We have Megan Kelsel from the city's Environmental Services Department, and we have Grace Doe from the Chesapeake Bay Trust. So tonight we're going to be talking about stormwater management approaches and specifically highlighting the Rainscapes Reward Program in the city of Gaithersburg. Here is a brief overview of what we're going to get into tonight. So we'll do a couple of opening polls and then an introductory discussion that will be led by my colleague Katie Evers. Then we'll talk a little bit about some of the land areas and actions that individuals and communities can take towards watershed protection. Then we'll turn it over to Megan and Grace to talk about the Rainscape Reward Program and how to reduce stormwater from the source. And then we'll open it up to questions from the group. So if you want to unmute, you're welcome to raise your hand and ask questions or share your thoughts verbally, or you can type in the chat box for that section. Then we'll wrap up with some information about our next meeting and some surveys and other opportunities for you to stay involved between now and our next meeting. So with that, we will go ahead and get started with our Zoom polls. And Katie, if you can go ahead and launch those. So there should be two questions on your screen. The first one is, have you attended any of our previous watershed planning meetings, or is this your first time joining us? And then the second question is about how you're most interested in contributing to this watershed planning project. And if you have any other ideas, please feel free to enter those in the chat. So if you have specific environmental education events or specific things you'd like to see as opportunities for involvement, feel free to share those with us too. So we'll give everyone a minute or two to add those responses. All right, we'll give everyone another 30 seconds or so. So last call. All right, and then we can go ahead and close the poll and share those responses. So we have a couple of recurring attendees, but also some new faces tonight, which is great to see. And then we have lots of interest on potential solutions to address the problem areas, which is great news because we have some new stream problem areas that we've recently discovered, as well as providing specific locations of concerns and some interest in environmental events as well. So we can go ahead and stop sharing those results. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Katie to do a little bit of an opening discussion.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight on this beautiful night. We just wanted to have a little discussion about, what you personally care most about in your local environment, whether it's your community or your neighborhood. What are those priorities that really empower you to take action? And then how do you see the watershed planning process protecting those things you care about? So you're welcome to raise your hand and come off mute if you'd like to share with the group, or you can go ahead and put your answers in the chat. And I guess while we wait for brave folks to chime in or take your time in the chat, I'll share mine. Locally is getting to see monarchs in my own backyard. That is one of the most things I care about, getting to see the pollinators, the variety, the biodiversity that's out here. So
I'm very wildlife motivated too. All the birds and fireflies in particular, that is such a difference. I feel like I've lived in a couple of different places with various amounts of environmental protections, and the difference between the number of fireflies is crazy.
in the chat, we have protecting our trees and against invasives, which is super important. And also, I want to see my neighborhood be part of a healthy ecosystem as much as possible. The water that lands in my yard is part of the whole ecosystem and it needs to be treated right to be part of the whole. And thanks, Jeanette, as well. Jeanette mentions going to a city park the other day. Oh, you saw monarchs. Oh, beautiful. Um, yeah, plant natives and they will come. That is so true. Thanks as well, Tony, for chiming in. Green space is so, so important, and the wildlife that comes with it.
One thing I can say in terms of like how watershed planning connects to some of those wildlife things is we're going to be identifying like tangible opportunities throughout the city and county portions for different types of native plantings and restorations that'll create more habitat and more connected habitat for species like that. So cool stuff to come in the new year.
Yeah, Reagan also joined our chat, reducing runoff and keeping small streams clean. Yeah, it does hurt me too to see how much runoff goes down the streets during a storm, but making strides in the right direction with processes like these and plans.
What else?
Well, if
Any
you
final
think,
thoughts? Last call?
yeah, last call, and if you think of anything else you want to add to the chat later, you're quite welcome to do so.
Definitely. And we can revisit any additional thoughts in the open discussion at the end as well. So definitely keep chewing on this as we move forward. Thanks, Katie. All right. And so with that, I'm just going to highlight a couple of the initial results of our watershed characterization. And specifically, I'm going to highlight some individual and group opportunities that you personally can take to start protecting the watersheds while we're working on these plans. So first, I thought it was interesting that the city's watersheds, which include the entirety of the city's boundaries and also a pretty decent chunk of Montgomery County, about 13% of the county's total area, it's a pretty significant portion of the land that drains to this portion of the Potomac River. So I just thought it was important to highlight that when we come together, we have a significant chunk of land here that we can affect change within. And what you see here is some pretty cool. I'm going to try and hold back my science nerd tendencies with some of this data. But this is some very, very cool and recent high resolution land use land cover data from the Chesapeake Bay Program and Chesapeake Conservancy, which was just updated and released in 2024. So it reflects land use conditions for 2021 and 2022, which might sound a little bit dated, but when in the world of data, that's super recent and super accurate. It's like 0.5 meter resolution for any of you fellow nerds in the audience. So we have some really, really cool data here to work with on what's going on in the city's watersheds and how the land is going to behave in storm events and things like that. All right, I thought I would do, I know most of us here are pretty familiar with the city's watersheds, but I thought it'd be nice to give us some refresher and refresh on the names as well. So we have a total of 6 subwatersheds, which we have lumped into with 3 meaningful groups for our watershed plans. So from north to south, that's the Middle Great Seneca, which has 3 subwatersheds, the Lower Seneca, which has 2 subwatersheds, and the Muddy Branch watershed, which is just 1 subwatershed. Um, Looking forward, here is a look at the land cover within these subwatersheds. So we in the watershed plans will have full detailed breakdowns of every, so these are the general land use classes, but we'll have detailed land use classifications as well as percentage and summaries of these within each of the subwatersheds and potentially within some of the neighborhood boundaries as well as we're looking at smaller site scale opportunities. So that's a little bit of a teaser for the watershed plans. But looking at this data just kind of qualitatively, I kind of wanted to open it up and ask folks if you notice any patterns or do you see any types of patterns throughout the watershed or areas that you recognize. And I would just highlight in the little legend on the left here, some of the orange, light orange colors are agricultural, dark greens are forest, and then reds, blacks are typically development or impervious things. So what kind of patterns do you see throughout the watershed? And feel free to chime in the chat or unmute. And Katie, if you don't mind reading out comments from the chat.
Or Jeanette's already chimed in and mentioned the lots of cropland over in the ag reserve.
Yeah, that's right.
I have a couple more comments. So many impervious surfaces in Gaithersburg. Yeah, a lot of red dots throughout.
No kidding. They don't call it a city for nothing. No, I'm just kidding.
And Megan also calls out that the forests are somewhat linear following the streams. Great point.
Yeah, that's a great comment.
And there are, yeah, a few very concentrated impervious areas. Thank you, Reagan. And Jeanette says, I feel like, oh, you should know what the large lakes are.
Got Clopper Lake in there, a couple other good things in there for sure.
I can't think of the word, but I'm trying to say that the impervious parts are near the where the watershed begins. What's that word?
I would just say the boundary, but yeah, we've got
Yeah, it and then
Is
as
it
it gets
headwaters?
closer to the river, it's greener. I mean that's good, you know.
I think it is headwaters, Megan. That might have been the word
That's
you're
the
looking
word.
for,
I
Tony.
couldn't think of the word. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It
No, that's
happens to
great. And
me.
you're exactly right. That is exactly where the headwaters are. Um, and you're right that that's another pattern that some of the more upstream areas have more of the development, and then some of the downstream areas look like they have more forests, wetland, and agriculture.
Mhm. So it's a worry to pay attention, I think, to pay attention to the headwaters.
I think one kind of lesson I've learned over the course of my career is that all land uses come with their own problems. And so
Mm.
it's all a worry and it's all something to manage. And the more holistically you look at it, the better it goes. So
There
no,
you go.
no, no cross-sector finger pointing over here. All right, final comments, and then I'm going to move on. Anything else in the chat, Katie?
Jeanette's funny tonight. Says I'm having flashbacks to landscape ecology.
Oh, nice. Okay, good deal. All right, well, I'll keep going, but feel free to keep chiming in the chat. And Katie, please interrupt me if anything comes up.
Sure.
Um, so this was kind of fun for me. I started, so back when we were analyzing some of the parcel data throughout the city and the county, we were classifying property ownership to try and find good stream segments that we could assess or send our contractor out to assess. And so using that data and some of the zoning land use classifications in the city's parcel data set, I identified lots of places where people could live or manage their own land within the city of Gaithersburg, which was a surprisingly big chunk of it, in my opinion. It was over 55% of the city, which you see in these kind of bright green solid areas here. Um, so these areas include everything from single family homes, multifamily homes like duplexes and apartment complexes, townhouses, residential and commercial dual use buildings, and more. So there's a wide variety of types of homes in these areas and varying levels of control that individual residents will have over the common areas, but there's still influence that you have, like as a tenant of an apartment complex or a resident in a residential commercial dual use building, and so on and so forth. So these are really good areas where we can prioritize quick, direct impact, where people can do things on their own land that they manage without having to kind of coordinate with private landowners in a lot of cases. So I went in and looking at that 2021-2022 land cover that we saw earlier throughout Montgomery County. This is kind of a summary of what the land cover looks like in those residential areas within the city of Gaithersburg. So it's kind of a zoomed in look here. As you can see, there's a lot of turf grass. There's also a good amount of impervious cover, about 20% of each of those things. This harvested forest category is pretty small, but there's a couple other small ones that are shown as 0%, but they're a little bit more than 0%. But you also see tree canopy over turf grass and tree canopy over impervious. So lots of land uses here, which I wanted to ask if you can come up with anything. Do you have any ideas of what actions you might be able to take on these land uses? So, turf grass, impervious cover on your land.
I'm lost.
You mean get rid of the turf grass?
I mean, that's certainly one option, sure, but more like how you could manage it. So, some of the things that you could do to turf grass that might be bad for water quality are things like overusing fertilizer or compacting the grass really heavily with vehicles. Some things like that would be examples of things that you could avoid doing and make a meaningful impact on your turf grass.
I forget what all those different colors represent. Thank
That's
you. Thank
that is very reasonable. There you go. There's a lot of colors.
you. Yeah. Wow. I didn't realize we were so varied in our.
And like I said, this is just the residential areas within the city, and we're looking at all the areas within the city and county portions of the watersheds.
Mhm.
Well, I will share that I am part of a homeowners association, and we applied for a Chesapeake Bay Trust grant. We worked on it, and it was granted. Our deadline was August of 2024, and we were advised that we would receive the grant in, I think, December of 2024. It was for a bioretention garden. Our homeowners association is very close to a tributary of the Muddy Branch, and what was happening is behind our buildings goes down a rather steep hill into this tributary, and we had roof runoff, parking lot runoff, and stuff from the grass if it wasn't soaked in. All of it was running straight down into the Muddy Branch Creek tributary. And so there's a company there's more than one company, but we chose one of them that was suggested by the Chesapeake Bay Trust. And they designed a bioretention garden for us up at the top of our hill by our parking lot, and they rerouted all the roof downspouts from rain. They did this in in 2025, February and March. They were really constructing. And anyway, it's finished now, and we owners are maintaining it. And so this is the first summer that the native plants they planted there have been growing, and it's up to we homeowners to weed it and prune it as necessary. But just this, one of the things they planted was swamp milkweed. Now I'm kind of interested in monarch butterflies. And I live close to this tributary too, and I've been looking. I lived here 10 years now. I've been looking for monarch butterflies because we've got a lot of trees, as you can imagine, and the little insects, all that stuff's attracted to a little creek. And I had not seen in my neighborhood ever since I moved in any monarch butterflies. Okay, now that it's late summer, and we've got our bioretention garden that has, among other things, swamp milkweed. We have monarch caterpillars crawling on the swamp milkweed. And
How
I'll just say,
wonderful.
oh, it is. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. My sister in another state is interested in monarch butterflies. She makes a little bit of a habit of trying to cultivate them. And so she's educated me a little bit. And but anyway, the second, and I'll stop after this one, another native plant we have is called, I think it's cardinal flower. It's bright red. And the hummingbirds are coming to the cardinal flower. Now I've seen, and I have like a little feeder near my deck for the hummingbirds. And I've seen hummingbirds and they love both the water and the insects and the, stuff that you feed them in the sugar feeder. But anyway, these are coming to the wild plants and they're going to continue to come to. So I'll just stop after that if you happen to be in a homeowners association and you members of the homeowner association want to do a lot of work, let me tell you, this is not a simple, quick thing. We had volunteers who put many hours and learned many things. But like I said, we got the grant's implemented, we're maintaining it. And so if you want to do the work, it's an excellent benefit.
That's so wonderful, Suzanne. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's like the perfect example of the type of community action we're looking to inspire. And you're very right that it is work, but that's kind of why we're here and what we're hoping that the plans will help with is like giving you hyper local opportunities and then also summaries of funding opportunities where the things that can be pursued. So those CBT grants that you've mentioned will be listed as potential opportunities in the plans, and hopefully that kind of documentation and highlighted examples like what you've done in your HOA will be really inspiring for others. So thanks so much for sharing. And if you take any good butterfly or hummingbird pictures, send them our way because I'd love to show them off.
Okay.
All right. Any comments in the chat, Katie, that you wanted to add in, or just kind of chatting back and forth about what we've seen?
Yeah, there was Jeanette mentioned IPM, integrated pest management, as another thing that we can do, and also mentioned gray water in there as well. With compost tea is another comment.
Oh, nice. I like that compost tea. Well, I just wanted to list a couple of other actions here, which we touched on many of these, but just to reiterate. So, on these turf grass areas, which is 20% of the residential land in the city of Gaithersburg, we can reduce or eliminate our fertilizer usage on those areas. We can also not drive vehicles over our turf grass so that we don't further compact it and make it infiltrate even less. And then integrative pest management, I guess, is another good one for those turf grass areas and how you use herbicides and pesticides and things. On the impervious area categories, which includes the gray bars as well as this army green bar that's 18%, which is tree canopy on top of those impervious areas, we can reduce salt usage, and pavement can be removed altogether if it's not being used, or it can be replaced with permeable pavers. And Grace is going to talk about how Rainscapes might be able to help with those kinds of projects later as well. A couple of vegetation things you can do is you can advocate to protect, preserve, and expand the forested areas that are near your neighborhoods. There are easement programs and other protection programs that can serve to make sure that these forested areas stay forested moving forward. And then in some of the areas that are barren or have low vegetation that may not be native, you can go in and plant more native vegetation, especially in HOA common areas is a beautiful place to do that. So lots of opportunities there. And then in terms of community action, we are organizing community events, we being the city and the Center for Watershed Protection as part of this watershed planning project. But the city is also organizing events on their own, and I'm sure with Chesapeake Bay Trust and elsewhere throughout the watershed's partners as well. But you can organize your own community events, and these can be hyper local with just you and a couple of neighbors to clean up trash, to plant some new native vegetation, or to educate the kids in your neighborhood about some environmental things going on. But frankly, one of the most helpful things you can do is just to talk to your neighbors about the city's environmental services, programs, projects and goals. Invite them to these meetings, send them just requests about whatever you want and connect. And I've found that it's really helpful to start hyper local with just a couple of neighbors and build up from there, because it can be daunting to try and corral a huge number of people to do this big event as your first thing, but it starts small. And I personally have had a lot of luck with I don't know if anyone's in their Buy Nothing group on Facebook, but I've had a lot of luck with that. It's folks who just kind of give and receive things for free, and sometimes you'll find some cool native plant seeds in there or other gardening supplies and all kinds of fun stuff. So those are just some initial thoughts. But again, I'd love to, in the open discussion later on, we can revisit this and talk more about ideas for what we can all do to help manage this land. So with that, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Megan and Grace to talk about the Rainscape Reward Program.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan and Katie. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Alrighty. So, hi everyone, I'm Grace. I'm with the Chesapeake Bay Trust, and recently the Trust has been able to partner with the City of Gaithersburg to help facilitate the Rainscapes Reward Program. And so I have the lovely opportunity to work with Megan and Nancy and get the chance to talk with you all today about the Rainscapes Reward Program, some updates that have been made to the program, as well as how the Rainscapes Program can help reach some of our stormwater goals. So I'm going to start by throwing it over to Megan actually to talk a bit about the city goals and how that interplays with stormwater.
Hello, everyone. So these were some of our city goals that are in our city's master plan. So I just wanted to give this as the framework for why we have the Rainscapes program. So one of our big goals is concerning water quality. So what is in the water that is running off, along with erosion. That's the icon in the top right. We don't want sediment going into our stream water because pollutants tend to bind to sediment. So it's a very easy pollutant to spot that can be an indicator for other pollutants. And that's often associated with anywhere where you have high amounts of runoff, perhaps construction sites or places, stream sides that aren't as healthy, where there's not as much root material. Those can be sources for high erosion for our streams. We want more tree canopy in our city because we want it to reduce the heat island effect, as well as the higher air quality that trees provide as they filter our air. We want to reduce any flooding chances that occur because of the impervious surfaces that our city naturally has as a functioning city. But we want to make sure that our citizens are safe and that we stay out of our floodways. And last, we want to increase biodiversity in the city because we are part of our ecosystem as a whole. And if our ecosystem is healthier, then our residents are healthier. So we can go to the next slide. And so a lot of these themes revolve around our stormwater, which is going to increase because we have more impervious surfaces. So if we have a very low, impervious surface or none in a rural environment, we have very little runoff and most of the water is infiltrating into the soil to be filtered and stored later for use, potentially if it's in an aquifer. The more suburban and then urban environments, you get more runoff. This increases the chance to pick up pollutants along the way. If it's running over asphalt, it could pick up oils from cars, etc., trash, and you're really decreasing that infiltration. So this increases the flood risk for any urban environment. So because of this system that we have, because we are a city of Gaithersburg, we wanted to do everything we can to reduce these impervious surfaces, and that's where the Rainscapes program comes in. I think we can hand it off to Grace.
Yeah, so what is the Rainscapes Reward Program? So the Rainscapes Reward Program is a rebate or reimbursement program that aims to incentivize homeowners and also reduce the installation costs of specific actions to help property owners improve their water quality and reduce stormwater runoff. So we offer a set of practices that you can be rebated or reimbursed for installing these practices in your home. The funding for this program comes from the city of Gaithersburg and specifically the stormwater program fee, which is a part of the tax that homeowners pay for having impervious surface on their property. So this program is a way for us to get that take that stormwater program fee and give it back to homeowners to be able to help improve water quality and again reduce that stormwater runoff. Home property owners are eligible for it is up to 5,000 per household per homeowner. So homeowners and property owners have the opportunity to receive up to $5,000 in rebate or reimbursement for installing these practices. And so if you have been previously a fan of the program, you may have heard of the three existing practices that the city ran, which was the water collection program, including rain barrels and cisterns, conservation landscaping, and soil testing. And recently, we've been lucky enough to also include some new practices as well. So we now offer rebates for rain gardens, tree canopy, pavement removal, and permeable pavers. And so each of these practices has a different rebate amount, different minimum size qualifications, and they also offer different benefits. So I'll go through and I'll chat a little bit about each of the practices, their rebate amount, and then I'll talk more about what the application looks like. So one of the easiest and most common practices we see installed through the rebate programs is the rain barrels and cistern practices. These practices are having this collection mechanism that is directly connected to your downspout that collects water from your roof. So any kind of runoff that would come from your roof and go into the yard, into the roadways, and ultimately into our watershed then gets contained in either a rain barrel or cistern. And this is lovely in the sense that we're reducing runoff from the roof, but it also saves water resources. So a lot of people will use their rain barrel or their cistern to water their garden, or even sometimes, oh yeah, thank you, Katie, wash their cars. So these practices are great in the sense that not only are you collecting stormwater from your roof, but you are also potentially saving drinking water resources and sometimes even money on your water bill by using the rainwater collection programs. So for rain barrels and cisterns, the rebate amount is $1 per gallon, and that's for both the rain barrels and the cisterns. The main difference between the two practices is their size. So for rain barrels, the minimum size is 50 gallons. So to receive a rebate, you must install a rain barrel that's 50 gallons or above. And for cisterns, the minimum size is 250 gallons. So once you hit that 250 gallon mark, we consider it a cistern, but that is still the $1 per gallon rebate amount. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put those in the chat or come off mute. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And so the next practice I want to talk about is conservation landscaping, which is the installation of native plants and often in replacement of turf grass or sometimes even pavement in yards. So conservation landscaping is great because it promotes native plant biodiversity and it also helps create wildlife and pollinator habitat, which we talked a lot about earlier in the presentation. However, another benefit of conservation landscaping is its ability to increase stormwater infiltration and stormwater treatment, as well as reduce erosion. So I have this lovely diagram from the DC River Smart Homes program that shows how native plants can, their root system differs from alternatives such as turf grass. So if you look on the diagram on the far left, there's this really small, and it is quite small compared to the root systems of the native plants, red box that shows the turf grass. And so that shows the kind of root system of your just your lawn. However, what takes up a majority of this graph is the root systems of native plants. And so native plants are adapted to thrive and survive in this environment, and they have these really intricate, strong root systems that help really increase stormwater infiltration and helps increase the water uptake of these stormwater uptake of these plants, but also reduces erosion. So by planting native plants in replacement of the turf grass, you are helping keep the soil happy as well as promote more infiltration with stormwater. And so for conservation landscaping, we offer a $6 per square foot rebate if you include soil improvements or a $5 square foot rebate without soil improvements. And so what can be considered a soil improvement is something, a question we get a lot. And some people mentioned these as well earlier in the presentation, but if you will be amending the soil with compost, sometimes we've had questions about biochar, any kind of mechanism that would help improve the quality of the soil, that's what we consider soil improvement. And then if you're just using planting in your yard without any soil improvements, we still provide that $5 per square foot rebate as well. We ask that all conservation landscapes to be eligible, they're above 200 square feet or greater than 200 square feet. And then so some people, when they start with conservation landscape, they are so excited, but they're like, what do I plant? And so it sounds like we have a lot of native plant enthusiasts in the meeting right now, which is exciting, but I do want to provide some resources as well. So as another specification, for conservation landscaping, we ask that 2/3 or 75% of the plants must be native to the Chesapeake Bay region. So it doesn't have to be 100%. We understand that you may have a favorite plant that may be non-native that you're interested in planting, and we don't want to stop you from applying to the program. But we do ask that 2/3 of the plant are native and that you're not planting any invasive species. And if you're new to native plants and you're interested in getting into native plant gardening, but you're not sure what kind of plants to plant, I highly recommend checking out the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay's Native Plant Center. This website is kind of a search mechanism for different native plants depending on their habitat, what kind of plant you want, any kind of criteria you can think of. There's a few on the screen, such as what kind of sun exposure? Do you want a tree? Do you want a herbaceous flowering plant? Are you interested in a grass? What kind of soil texture? But there are others such as color and general height and size as well. So I always like to push this resource as a great way for people to learn more about native plants and also understand what plants may fit best with their yard. And so our next practice we'll go through is soil test. So with soil test, as we talked about earlier, with responsible fertilization in your yards as a way to reduce nutrient pollution, we offer that soil test rebate for people to be able to learn more about their yard, their garden, any kind of soil that they may have on their property. So as we discussed earlier, soils have different properties, and sometimes when you receive fertilizer, oh, thank you, Katie, for putting that link in the chat. When you're fertilizing, you often see kind of what I call a one-size-fits-all fertilizer. It has all the different kinds of nutrients. It has everything you may need. However, an issue that may come with that is that these all nutrient fertilizers, they aren't made specifically to your soil. Everyone's soil is different. It has high levels of some nutrients and low levels of others. And when you put everything in your soil, it doesn't increase the productivity automatically. There's kind of this maximum that you hit, and then everything else can become runoff. So by conducting a soil test, you get to learn more about your specific soil and what your soil may need specifically. So what kind of nutrients specifically, if there are any contaminants in your soil that you should be aware of. And by conducting a soil test, you can really learn how to more effectively fertilize your lawn, your vegetable garden, or any other kind of garden you may have in your yard. And so for soil tests, you can receive a rebate of $20 per soil test conducted, and we ask that you have a maximum of 2 soil tests per year. And so for one of our new practices, we have first up is the rain garden. And so similar to the conservation landscaping, the rain garden promotes native plant biodiversity and it creates wildlife and pollinator habitat. However, a rain garden, different from a conservation landscape, exists within a depression. So it exists at a lower elevation, and that really helps it capture and treat stormwater more effectively. So rain gardens are great at increasing their stormwater infiltration and treatment, much like with the same reasons we discussed in the conservation landscape. But because it's at that lower depression, it gives itself stormwater a greater chance of infiltrating into the ground, and it helps reduce runoff. So this is a great diagram from Lawrence Garden Service. So you'll have rain that comes, it can fall on your roof, much like Suzanne, you discussed. You can reroute a downspout from a home into a bioretention or a rain garden, or you can just have the water naturally filter into your rain garden just by the slope or whatever other kind of elevation differences there may be. And in the rain garden, the water will collect and it has the chance with the deep roots of the plants, as we discussed, to be able to infiltrate into the ground and be filtered before entering our waterway. Let's see. All right. For rain gardens, our rebate amount is $10 per square foot, and we ask that it is at least 75 square feet total in size. And again, this is similar. This is actually the same slide as the conservation landscape. We do ask that, again, the plants, there is two-thirds of the plants are native to the Chesapeake Bay region. And I, again, highly recommend the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay's native plants in our website, especially when, if you're picking what kind of plants to put in your rain garden, the soil moisture tool can be super helpful to learn what plants really thrive well in a high moisture environment and that can do well in a rain garden. And I have some examples here. Swamp milkweed is on this list as well. So I'm glad that we have some swamp milkweed fans in the crowd. But there's a variety of different plants that you can put. I don't want to say these are just ones that we have seen often and some of my personal favorites. So red chokeberry, black-eyed Susans, great bluebelia, moss fox is the one with a really bright color. Of course, the swamp milkweed, but with its benefits to monarchs, and then switchgrass as a good grass to add that is not just a shrub or like a flower. You can have a variety of different plants existing within the rain garden, which is exciting. And then we also have the tree canopy rebate. So this is the rebate program through where you can plant a tree in your yard and receive funds for that tree. The benefits of the trees is that they can help promote the native plant biodiversity and create wildlife and pollinator habitat, and again, increase stormwater infiltration and treatment. So we talked a lot about the roots and related to native plants. However, think of that kind of on tenfold size with the tree. So they have a huge canopy that creates a lot of different spaces for wildlife and pollinators, but they also have these huge extensive root systems that help really, again, reduce erosion, but also help stormwater infiltrate into the ground. And another benefit of trees is their increase with shade. So we often see that planting trees can help reduce electricity bills as they're providing shade to the home. And during hot summer months, you're not paying as much to cool your house as you might be, which we all may understand as we have had a hot summer as well. Not today though, but trees, they have all these benefits with the biodiversity, the pollinator habitat, but they can also provide that needed shade during the hot summer months. So for trees, we offer two different rebates amounts. We have the $150 for what we consider canopy trees, and then we offer $100 for understory trees. And so canopy versus understory can be determined by species, and I'll go over that a little bit more in the next slide. But for the size requirements, we ask that understory trees are either 5 gallons, come in a 5-gallon pot, are 5 feet tall, or have a 1/2-inch caliper, which means a 1/2-inch diameter. And so they don't have to meet all of those requirements. We ask that it is one of those 3 things. And the canopy trees have similar requirements where we ask that it is in a 7-gallon pot, it's 8 feet tall, or it's around 1 inch in caliper. And so for actual species on what is a canopy versus an understory tree, we do use the Marylanders plant list as a great resource. So this website will list small trees or smaller understory trees that are native to Maryland, as well as large trees, so those canopy trees. And I also included some just general examples here. Again, the Marylanders plant trees have tons of amazing trees. These are 3 of my favorites, and I think that I see a lot of throughout the different rebate programs. So we have river birch, which is great for wet areas. They love water and they thrive there. There's the redbud, which is known for its lovely, gorgeous flowers and bright blooms. And then of course, we have the white oak, which is the Maryland state tree as well. So these are some examples, but I highly recommend checking out the Marylanders plant trees list for a comprehensive list of different kinds of trees. And if you are interested in planting a tree that is not on the Marylanders plant tree list, please feel free to ask. We're happy to look into that for you. We also use, again, the Native Plant Center's website to help determine what the different sizes of the trees are as well. And so for the last 2 practices, we have pavement removal and permeable pavers, which kind of go together. So the pavement removal rebate is super cool because it removes impervious surfaces, which is great. And so that helps reduce runoff, it increases infiltration. But another benefit is that it can actually help reduce your property's stormwater fee as well. So as I spoke about earlier, this program is funded from the stormwater fee, which is a set fee you pay based on the amount of impervious surface you have on your property. However, by removing impervious surface through the pavement removal program, you can reduce the amount of impervious surface on your property and help reduce that fee you pay, which is super cool. So using money from the program to help reduce your stormwater fee and also reducing runoff and potentially replacing it with either a conservation landscape or turf grass. So our rebate is if you are replacing your pavement with conservation landscape, you can receive that $7 per square foot because as we talked about, conservation landscape has tons of benefits. However, we understand that others may want to just replace it with sod. So we do offer that $3 per square foot rebate for replacing your pavement with sod. And we ask that you remove at least 100 square feet of pavement. And then finally, we have the permeable pavers, which we talked a little bit about earlier. So permeable pavers is interlocking concrete pavers that allow for stormwater to infiltrate directly on the site. So rather than with normal pavers or concrete, the stormwater will hit the hardscape and it will roll off into the street, into the storm drain, into the yard, wherever it may go. With permeable pavers, that water is given the chance to infiltrate. So there is little spaces between the pavers as well as a certain type of stone underneath that allows that water to trickle through and infiltrate into the ground, which is great. So the stormwater is treated on the on the site itself, which is exciting. So this overall will reduce runoff in the sense that the water is just going straight through and it increases infiltration and it's giving that water a chance to go into the ground and be treated rather than becoming runoff.
Is
And
that
so we
excuse me, is that practical for like a road where you know, because we have multifamily housing, and so see, this is showing a single family house. That driveway is not going to get really a whole lot of traffic on it, but we have a more trafficy situation, and even though it's a private road, you know, is that so? Is this kind of permeable pavers practical for heavier traffic?
It depends on when you say heavier traffic, I think how much heavy traffic. I have seen almost these exact pavers be used for parking lots. So it can accommodate a high weight, it can accommodate a lot of use, but it will depend. I'm unsure if I've seen like a high use road be made of permeable pavers, but it definitely can accommodate parking lots, any kind of road within the community as well, potentially. And I see Jordan.
Yeah, so sorry, my stormwater nerd got excited. That's a really good question, Suzanne. I've seen some really interesting and creative ways to get permeable pavement in places that have a little bit more high traffic because typically, like, maintenance can be a little bit intense for permeable pavers, and maintenance goes up the more traffic there is or the more leaf litter there is from overhead, like tree canopy over it, that kind of a thing. But I've seen, like what Grace mentioned, in parking lots where maybe sometimes they'll do just the parking lot spaces themselves as permeable pavement, but then have normal asphalt for the drive aisles. And I've also seen that on like smaller residential or park streets through residential areas near parks where the main drive section is typical asphalt, but then the edges are permeable pavement or the side parking is permeable pavement. So there could be options.
Yeah,
But
because like we get
yeah.
those big heavy duty trash trucks too. Those things weigh a lot. So I'm thinking in that any place a trash truck comes is for the old traditional kind.
That might be the case, but you could always try and like get a buyer retention at the downstream end of that road on the side where the water goes down or something like that. So there's other options too.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan. We've also seen projects where people will take only a small strip of their parking lot or driveway and make it permeable pavers. So majority of the space will be hardscape, impervious surface, but they do have that space at sort of the bottom of the parking lot or wherever the lower elevation is that can help help the stormwater infiltrate. So there are definitely a lot of options with permeable pavers and how they can be installed in different locations. And I will mention, this is a great place to mention that permeable pavers, we do require that this practice be installed by a certified contractor. All of our other practices can be done by DIY or do it yourself, but for this one, we do ask that you have a experienced contractor work just so we can ensure that the practice will function and that the water will infiltrate properly. And so our rebate amount for permeable pavers is $14 per square foot. And similar to the pavement removal, we ask that you install at least 100 square feet of the practice. And so those were all of our practices, and now I get to talk to you a little bit about how do you apply. So I always want to highlight our website. This is what I call our one-stop shop for everything you need to know about the program. It contains the link to the application. We have fact sheets for each of our practices, so detailed documents going into why the practice is beneficial, how do you apply, and what the steps are, and what kind of documentation is needed. We have our eligibility as well as resources as well. So there is a previous information session that we held that is visible, as well as the program guidelines and application instructions. So I highly recommend checking out our website, as this has all the information you should need. And so who is eligible for the program? So we take applications from all different kinds of applicants, including single-family homes, multifamily home unit renters with property owner approval, and nonprofits such as religious institutions, private schools, homeowners associations as a whole, as well as condominium associations as a whole. Our only requirement is that you are within the City of Gaithersburg municipal limits, so making sure you are in the municipal limits. And this is the map, the stormwater program fee website, which I can also include as a link in the chat afterwards. This is the map that I use to determine eligibility. So if you're ever curious about whether or not you are in the municipal city limits or not, I highly recommend inputting your address or tax account number just to confirm before you go through with the application. And so what kind of documents do you need to apply to the program? So one document that you'll need to fill out is the application form, which I'll go through in the next slide. But we also ask that you fill out a property owner agreement. This is kind of similar to the terms and conditions of the program. And we ask that you fill out and sign based on the kind of practices you're installing. We also ask for homeowner association approval. If you are in an HOA and installing a practice, we want to make sure that your homeowner is aware and approves of it. And of course, if you're a renter, we require property owner approval. And so for each of the practices as well, they're all a little different. So they all require different documentation for each specific one. So for example, like I talked about earlier, for the permeable pavers, we ask that you show proof of a certified contractor. For rain gardens or conservation landscape, we may ask upfront for a plant list or a site design. And we also often ask for photos of the site and where these practices will be installed. So the required documents are outlined in each of the practice checklists, which again are available on our website with the fact sheet. And I'm also happy to answer any questions about documentation as they arise if you go through the application. And so for the application itself, what does that look like? So you're gonna, from our website, you can click Start an Application, and it'll prompt you to create an account with our system. From there, you'll be prompted to take an eligibility quiz, which asks you simple questions such as, did you read some of the eligibility requirements from the program? And are you in the municipal city limits of Gaithersburg? So hopefully, especially since you're in this meeting, you would have already looked that information up, and you should be able to pass the eligibility quiz with flying colors. And then we ask you fill out the first 3 pages of the application, which includes information about yourself, such as your name, your property, some contact information from you, and then we also ask about your property and project information. So what are you interested in installing and why are you interested in installing it? In this application form, it then gives you space to upload that property owner agreement that I talked about, as well as any additional documentation that you may have collected or you will need for each of your practices. After that, there is a tab for each of the practices, and for whatever practice you intend to install, we ask that you go to the tab and input some basic information. So, for example, if you're looking to do tree canopy, we'll ask that you go to the tab, tell us how many trees you intend to plant and kind of what species. And so one thing I also want to highlight here is that you do not have to have a fully fleshed out, fully planned idea ready before you apply. We are happy to work with you throughout the process and even before you apply to help develop your project, understand what's required, and understand the process for your individual situation better. So I am happy to conduct any pre-installation site visit, pre-application site visits, as well as answer any questions. So don't worry about having 100% like an A+ project ready when you're applying. I'm happy to assist with that along the way. And speaking of this along the way, so what happens once you submit the application? So this is the Rainscape's reward workflow. So you start by completing the application form. Once you complete the application form, the trust will follow up for a potential site visit or any additional documentation. So if you're missing anything in the application, I'll reach out and I'll ask for it, and I can also provide any assistance you may need with the documentation along the way. Certain practices don't require site visits, so rain barrels and soil tests. I do not need to come out to your property to see the site. We accept photos. So that's a case where we would just skip that step, but you may also need some additional documentation. So after you complete the form, I'll likely be in contact with you for a site visit or if anything's missing. We'll then conduct the site visit and then we'll collect all the documentation needed. So whatever is missing, we'll be able to gather that. And again, I can assist you along the way if you need any help. And then your practice is pre-approved. And a question we get often is, what is pre-approval and why do you have it? And so by pre-approving your practice, we're ensuring that you are in the best place possible to receive your rebate. So that pre-approval is basically a green check mark saying, yes, you are doing everything we need to correctly, and if you do everything you're going to say, you will receive a rebate. So it's us allowing us to ensure you that you are a candidate for receiving the reimbursement for your project. After your practice is pre-approved, the practice is then installed by you all, and you once you're completed, will notify us and we can conduct a post-installation site visit and you can submit your receipts for the practices. So we'll come out, we'll hopefully look at your practice and go, yay, this looks amazing. And then you get the chance to provide us with the receipt so we are able to then pay you your rebate, which comes in the form of a check in the mail. So this is kind of the whole outline process. And again, I want to highlight that I'm available for help throughout the entire process, from project brainstorming to application completion. And throughout these various site visits, I want to emphasize that the trust is here to help you with this process. And so that is all I had. Are there any questions?
There was one that came up in the chat from Tony asking, can you apply for more than one grant? Do you hire your own contractor and give recommendations?
Yeah, those are great questions. So yes, you can apply for more than one rebate or grant. For the rebates, since they are reimbursements, it's a little bit different from the grant, but yes, you can apply to multiple. You have up to $5,000 of rebates that you can receive. So you can apply as many times until you have spent down that $5,000 amount. And for contractors, we do have the homeowner or the property owner hire their own contractor and facilitate that relationship. However, we do have a lovely list from the Montgomery County Rainscapes program that has just a list of contractors who have gone through training and are familiar with rebate programs. So we have that list on our website, and we highly recommend taking a look at that list when you're picking your contractor, just so you know you can have someone who's familiar with the program.
And then Tony, if you want to chime in, you can, but you also mentioned in the chat that you had gotten a grant from the Isaac Walton League about 10 years ago, and you said your grant project needs a redo. Is that something that this program would facilitate?
Yeah, it depends on the project. Another program with the trust that I would like to highlight, especially since Suzanne mentioned her earlier grant, is that we just closed this program now, but next year we will be running the Outreach and Restoration Grant Program, which has funds specifically for the city of Gaithersburg to do maybe larger stormwater practices at nonprofit sites throughout the city. So I am happy to talk with you more about the potential redo depending on the project, but I also do want to emphasize that that resource is available as well.
Grace, I don't know if you'll know
Thank
the
you.
answer to this question, but I have a random question. So Montgomery County also has a Rainscapes program. Could a Gaithersburg resident participate in both the city's Rainscapes program and the county's program with different practices?
That's a great question. I think the answer is no, and I see Megan may also have
Yeah,
an
they
answer as well.
specifically list that Gaithersburg and Rockville residents are not eligible because we have our own program.
Gotcha.
So we modeled this program heavily after both Rockville and Montgomery County, so that there would be similarities. There's a few slight differences, but overall they should be the same.
That's good to know. And then I had one other random question for you, Grace. On one of the first slides for the eligibility, you mentioned the up to $5,000 rebate per household per homeowner. I got confused by both of those PERs. What if there are two people who own the home? Can each of them get $5,000 for the one household if they apply for different projects, or is it just per household?
That's a great question, Jordan, and thank you for asking for clarification. So by $5,000, the per homeowner, so it's per home, each home has $5,000 associated with it. However, if that home were to be sold and it were to go into the hands of someone new who is interested in applying for the program, we don't want to prevent that person from continuing the work of the previous homeowner. So it is $5,000 per home, but if that home ownership were to change hands, we want to provide that $5,000 to the new homeowner as well. So
That
for
makes sense. And that never would have been what I guessed, but I'm a renter, so maybe that's why.
no, that's
And
a
I
great
think that's one
question.
of the differences, right? Rockville, it's like you get the home gets 5,000 and it doesn't matter if it gets sold.
Yeah,
I
this is
think.
a great thing about the City of Gaithersburg program. In other programs, if you buy a home that already has its $5,000 spent, you may have some great stormwater practices, but you yourself can't continue the work. A great benefit of the City of Gaithersburg program is that it allows for that continuation with new residents or new home ownership.
That's so awesome. Very cool. And I see a comment in the chat, and if you move, you can get another 5,000 for
Yeah.
your new house, correct? Which I think so. If homeowner changes houses, then yes.
Yeah, because it's the rebate amount is associated with the property tax ID account number. So
Mm.
that is how we determine that $5,000 kind of amount and calculate everything out. But if the property ownership were to move, we do want to provide new owners with that benefit. So yeah, it is I guess, per household, per household, which can be more confusing. So
Oh gosh. Now
Yes.
Jeanette is coming up with conspiracy theories to trade houses and then so I don't know. Don't read that part.
That's a lot of effort.
Yeah.
We didn't expect there to be that much home selling in the city for it to be worth making that rule.
Yeah, right.
Depends on how
Although I
dedicated you
do know
are.
somebody that just moved from within the Ketlands to within the Ketlands. So it happens. So
I have one more question, Grace. So I know that it's a relatively recent transition for this program being administered by CBT as opposed to being administered internally within the city. So my question is, as more projects are completed through the program, will there be a place that showcases completed projects either on your website or something? Or how can people kind of see examples or learn about the projects that exist in their communities?
yeah, that's a great question. So currently, actually, all the photos on the website are from the City of Rockville program since we haven't had that many applications come through our system yet.
Yeah.
So we're happy to showcase once we get these new projects in them on the website through just the general practice photos, but we can also include an information if the property owner is okay with it, since this is people's homes, examples of completed projects as well.
Very cool. All right. Well, Grace, if you can hang on for a few more minutes, if any other questions come up in the chat for you, you can feel free to answer those there. But otherwise, we're going to open it up to open discussion. And I think Jeanette is excited to share an anecdote with us about and something in the watersheds. So go ahead, Jeanette.
So on the subject of trading houses so we can get more rebates, Prairie Crossing is a community in Illinois that was very intentionally designed with lots of native plants and other environmental features. It is difficult to move in there because people don't move out. It has much lower turnover than the average American community. When people in Prairie Crossing do move out of their house, often they're moving into a different house in Prairie Crossing as they need a bigger or smaller house as their life circumstances change. So they're trading houses like that. Why can't we do it too? Shouldn't we become the kind of community where people want to just trade to different houses across their lifespan and never leave?
You're earing a little close to commune, but I do kind of see the vision in some ways.
Well,
Okay.
actually, I'm very familiar with Prairie Crossing.
Oh, yeah.
I did
So it
work
makes
in that
us-
area. I knew the
You did,
owners.
yes.
What
Yeah,
state was it
and
in again? Midwest,
it's
but
in
which one?
Illinois.
Illinois,
Lake
okay.
County, Illinois. But it actually was designed as a conservation community. So it started like all the planning, the people who started it were very visionary, and they their goal for this development was to create a conservation community. And there were people there, still people there, who have horses, so they had horse pastures, they had farmers markets, people grew food, there's community gardens, but you also sign an agreement when you move in there that you will maintain the conservation features on your property. So it is pretty revolutionary, and it is a very successful community. People do, love it there. But there was also a lot of other initiatives that when a development was expanding into former farmland, where they actually planned the communities around the features that were the conservation features that already existed on the land. So you would go in and you would not chop down trees. You would go in and you would design the community around the conservation features that existed.
That reminds
So
me a lot of better site design, like
yes,
it's
definitely. And
compacted
green
development.
infrastructure
Yeah.
planning. And when I first moved to Maryland, I was like, well, surely everybody on the planet does this. And I was so sorely mistaken. I
Wi-
was like, aren't we beyond the raise the land and then create something?
This
No.
is geographically so tangential, so bear with
Yeah.
me, but CWP did a project for the Virgin Islands a couple of years ago, and I was so surprised to see the development patterns, or lack thereof rather, there, because you really do take for granted how
Yeah.
organized and structured a lot of our development is here, but it was very like speckled and as needed and close to cultural resources, which is great from like an access point of view, but in terms of preserving natural areas around that over time, it was just fascinating to see the difference in how people approach development based
Yeah.
on where they are, you know?
Yeah.
Well, Nancy, you mentioned maintenance, and it got me thinking about Jordan's earlier question in the chat. When you do this rebate program, Grace, is there like any agreement that you have to sign off on that you will maintain this practice, or anything that goes along maintenance and post installation?
Yeah, the property owner agreement contains a little bit of information, and most likely I don't want to say like I'm signing to like maintain this practice for the rest of my life is kind of a bad thing, but we like to provide resources so people get invested in their projects and they're able to have the ability and the skills and what they need to be able to maintain it as well.
Very cool. And I think Megan commented that the permeable pavers, more specifically, the city has some additional tracking for that. What did you say, Megan?
Yeah, so we have a stormwater fee for all of our impervious area in the city for our property owners. So we didn't think it was right to be like we have to add in and subtract the porous pavers so that you're not getting billed for that because it's not impervious. Um, but we would like to probably periodically check to make sure that they're still functioning, because if they're not functioning, then they're not really impervious. But that probably wouldn't be any more frequent than like every 5 years or so. And that's just going to save you money off of your tax stormwater fee, which comes with I think it's your county taxes. I think it gets all incorporated in together. So that's the only like long-term maintenance that we would probably check on. Does that
That
make
makes
sense? You
sense.
look confused.
No, I'm wondering, this I was my face of confusion was deciding whether I should ask this question or not, but I'm going to now because you called me out on my face. Do the projects
Sorry.
installed through Rainscape, yeah, no, right. Do the projects that are installed through Rainscapes, do they count for like the city's MS4 reporting? Because you're not doing inspections or maintenance. So like the rain gardens in particular, like it's not like accredited bioretention for the city. It's right.
No, we decided not to because it just seemed like a lot of
It's a lot more
effort
prohibitive in terms of effort.
for
Yeah.
very little like it doesn't make sense for the number of credits that we would receive towards our MS4. I don't think it would add up to be significant. So it'd be a lot of work for very little reward.
However,
So
it does count for our education and outreach.
yeah.
Right, that makes sense. Jeanette said in the comment that the point of these inspections is to make sure that these things, that the BMPs work for the MS4 permit, which is true for like MS4 permitted projects or projects that are within the city's like reporting that they do for MDE annually, or however often. But these practices through Rainscapes don't have to have formal inspections that the city submits to MDE, is what they're saying. So instead of having those more stringent inspection requirements, it sounds like the city chose to lower the barrier, make it easier to install practices and easier to keep them going instead of having so many kind of administrative
Right. And we
blocks every so
really,
often.
our focus is not just on chasing credits at this point.
Yeah,
It's also about really
it's more holistic.
integrating practices that improve the overall benefits of stormwater management throughout the city. So we're chasing our own credits-ish, meaning that we track the projects that we have initiated and implemented, and we do maintain them and they are inspected. And we have projects that we're initiating, and many will be based on the results of this new watershed plan. But we don't want that to be the primary motivating factor for doing the right thing in these circumstances.
I'm really glad you said that, Nancy, because I think a lot of people's concerns with a lot of environmental restoration, specifically stream restoration, is that it's just done in pursuit of credits or for like to help achieve regulatory requirements and stuff like that, which is, we like to, or at least I like to think of the regulatory credit thing as like the cherry on top. So biological uplift, ecological uplift is kind of your main goal, water quality benefits. And then if you can also get credit towards towards the things that keep the ball rolling, then that's great. But the city has really robust other programs like the capital improvements, the list and all of that stuff going on to make sure that bigger projects that are being inspected by the city are being reported and all that good stuff.
Right. And I think a lot of projects were designed, I mean, they're revamping the whole program right now with MDE, which I think is awesome.
Mhm.
But I do think that it was like the engineers gone wild, where they were just like, yes, we can engineer everything, and, missing the point of environmental uplift and ecological uplift. So, yeah, it was. I mean, when I first got here, I was like, we are not doing that.
Yeah.
After spending years in an engineering firm and following these things and just, this is ridiculous. This misses the whole point of improving water quality, you know.
Yeah.
And we didn't do that in Illinois. I was in Illinois for 30 years. So we did not do that. That was not the driver for, true green infrastructure projects.
The one thing I would add that I think is really cool that the entire state of Maryland is doing is, I don't know if anyone's following like the whole Watershed Act thing that was passed somewhat recently, but that created an entire new permitting process for stream
Yeah.
restoration contractors who operate within the state of Maryland. So not only do you have to have like project specific permits through like the Army Corps of Engineers or whatever for the actual construction you're doing, but the contractor themselves has to have additional licensure through MDE to be able to do projects in the state because of some of those concerns. So there's some pretty cool things that are moving Maryland towards more holistic efforts, and we hope that these plans are kind of a step in that direction for sure.
Yes.
There was one more question in the chat from Reagan. So Reagan says you have maintenance resources for people. So if you're interested or have an issue with your BMP, even if it's not credited for the MS4 permit. I'm sure there's a wealth of resources out there, but I don't know if you have any on top of your head.
So obviously, as a city, we can't endorse, specific contractors. However, We do have people who are registered with the city, but Montgomery County also has an excellent list of potential contractors that are registered with the county and, have history within the county. Now, that being said, if you're part of these programs, I think Chesapeake Bay Trust also has a resource list that's available for people to use.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can put the Montgomery County contractor list in as well. And the trust, like the city, we cannot promote any particular group, but we are happy to provide recommendations for different groups in the area based on what you're specifically trying to find.
Great. All right. Well, if any more questions come up, feel free to put those in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and share a couple of closing slides so that we can get these surveys in front of you, which I know there's a couple of repeat surveys and we've got some committed regulars in our bunch here today. So you know about this survey, which is any problem areas and just overall concerns and priorities. And you know about signing up for volunteering to walk our streams. But I did want to pause here. Michaela and Megan, are there any updates you wanted to share about the volunteer stream assessments?
So we had our, you can go ahead, Michaela.
Oh no, I was just gonna say we had our first volunteer stream walk training on, I think it was last Monday. It went very well. We have a lot of interested people. We might host another one in mid to late fall. It kind of depends on when our stream restoration person is available. But yeah, it's a short training, about an hour long, and then you can go off and do the streams that we have a whole map put together of streams that we really need help with. And you can go out and whenever works for you. And it's a really, I think fun and easy way to get out into nature, especially as we get into nicer weather. So highly recommend it.
Yeah, we're approaching leaf off season, which is the best time to
Yes,
get in a stream, in my opinion, if you don't want to get
absolutely.
smacked in the face with ivy or something. Um,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
very good. And then I also wanted to note that so we have like expert geomorphologist contractors who also went out to do some stream assessments on 50 miles of streams that we thought would be the most severely impacted. And so that contractor has wrapped up their assessments and we're gonna start to look at results here soon. But they were able to share like some sites with lots of trash buildup for volunteers who wanted to get out and go clean things up. So if you're really itching to get out there and do something, feel free to reach out and we can kind of help set you up and get you ahead of the game as we're working on the plans. Okay. And then the last thing here is our next stakeholder meeting, which I am very, very excited about. So our next meeting is going to be another virtual meeting on Monday, September 22nd, same time frame as tonight's meeting, so 6:30 to 8 p.m. And this one is going to be an open discussion, kind of panel discussion event where you'll have the opportunity to ask your questions and share your thoughts with the city's environmental leaders, as well as environmental leaders and decision makers from the county, Parks and Planning Commission, and other partners within the watershed regions. So we are very excited about this one. And again, not to put you on the spot, Megan or Michaela, do you want to share some of the presenters who we have committed for this discussion so far?
Sure. Do you want me to do it, Michaela, or you want to do it?
You go ahead.
Okay, so we have Marvin is our mowing and bulk pickup and leaf pickup that evening is a holiday. September 22nd is a holiday.
Is it?
I didn't
What holiday
realize.
is it?
I don't think so.
Well, it might be close to one of the Jewish high holidays, but I'd have to look at a
Oh,
calendar.
we'll record it since we have everything set up.
Yeah.
But we'll record it for anybody that wants to join or to look at the answers later.
And one thing I would add real quick there is we're also, this next slide, you can send in your questions
Yes.
ahead of time. We'll answer them
Mhm.
during the recorded session, and then you'll be able to watch the recording and see your question get answered after. So no worries if you can't attend.
Yeah. So Marvin Martinez
Yes.
is with the city of Gaithersburg.
Yes, he's doing the mowing and bulk pickup. He does the leaf litter, the leaf pickup in the fall. We have a city council member, Jamil. What is Jamil's last name? Hernandez.
Hernandez.
So he coordinates with the EAC and has helped promote a lot of our environmental programs and projects. We've got somebody from MNCPPC, the parks that's in Montgomery County, so it's not just city staff. So he is a ecologist. So if you have any ecology park related questions, he would be great to ask those questions. And who am I missing?
Matt from Montgomery Department of the Environment, of Environmental
Yeah,
Protection.
he's the one from, and then somebody from Neighborhood Services who does your
Yes.
they
So
do so much. They do illicit
yeah,
discharge. Do you want
they
to
do the
explain that, Nancy?
enforcement for violations and for the city of Gaithersburg. So from Steve Marquina's staff with Neighborhood Services, they help with permits for hazard trees, as well as our own environmental team. And they also, as Megan said, they help monitor and control illicit discharges and through, anything that happens within the city.
And last but not least is Wayne Watkins, who supervises the maintenance of all the parks within the city. He does all the litter pickup organization. If people do pickups in the parks, we ask his team to pick it up, and he's very, very nice.
Very good. Well, yeah, so I'm very excited about this panel discussion. Obviously, the city team we have here today will be there, and Katie and I will be there if there are any questions about the watershed plans. But the biggest thing that you can do to help right now to help us prepare for that meeting is to not only submit your own questions, but share this survey around with your communities. If you're part of local groups, like whether maybe you volunteer with an animal shelter, or maybe you go to church or synagogue or some other religious institution, or you're part of a cultural community and go to Parks and Recs events every so often, or a crafting club, or whatever it is. Sharing these environmental efforts within your local connections is the biggest thing that you can do to help us get momentum and really kind of get some support behind these projects and the plans overall. So we definitely appreciate your participation in these kinds of surveys and are really looking forward to this panel discussion to get to hear from you all even more directly. All right. And with that, here's some contact information. We'll send out the link to the recording and the slides. I'm sure Michaela will send those out after the fact.